Alrighty, and we'll preview the Jacksonville Jaguars right now with one of our favorites, JP Shadrick, who does a great job covering the team and also works for Westwood One Sports. There's a lot of times in the college football season where I'm driving around in my car, and I don't like to be driving around in my car when there's college football games going on, but when I need to, I turn on the radio, and I hear JP Shadrick, and I don't care what game it is, and they give him a lot of big games, but it sounds like an enormous game that he is calling. He does a tremendous job here for us at Westwood One Sports, and he's kind enough to preview the Jags with us right now. JP, how you been, my man?
Zach, I'm great, man. Football's back, and this is a really fun part of the year. It's a really hot part of the year in Jacksonville, Florida, so we're kind of dealing with the heat. That's what it is in training camp, but that means we are counting down to kickoff, finally.
Well, let me start you off with the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. He's been in the news a lot because of the deal that he did get. For people that say, I don't know if Trevor Lawrence is worth the money. I don't know what Trevor Lawrence is going to turn into. What do you believe the Jaguars have through some good moments and some bad moments through the first 3 years of Trevor Lawrence's career?
You know, I think a lot of the Trevor Lawrence story might have been told in his rookie year when he had to deal with all the Urban Meyer drama and everything that happened there. He was the guy that had to go out there every week in front of the media and answer questions that he probably shouldn't have to answer as a rookie. So you saw some of his resilience in some tough moments, I think, in that rookie year. And that really laid the foundation for when things got right on the football side, that there was some success there. And he had his head right, and he had the right people around him. And you saw the success at the end of the 22 season where they had to rally back and win some games. And, he was fantastic down the stretch. The defense was great as well. But then last year they started out strong. He battled some injuries and just wasn't the same. They had some changes on the offensive line. But I think with Trevor Lawrence, you didn't want to go into this season with him having to prove that he was the franchise quarterback moving ahead. I think they wanted to get it done now. They've known from that first season that he's the guy that they want around here for the long term, and there's confidence that he can build into the consistency that they expect from that type of position and the number one pick. So go ahead and get it done now, and the number's only going to go up. And if it's done now, okay, you can set the salary cap and everything around your salary cap around that number for the next 7 years. So those are some of the reasons behind it. There's still growth to be had there for Lawrence. And I think this season will be a big stepping stone for him now, year 3 in Doug Peterson's offense.
As long as he's healthy, and that's a big part of the equation, what type of year do you envision individually for Trevor Lawrence?
Well, I mean, if he has all his pieces around him too, right? If he's healthy and he's got Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram all year, yes, the addition of Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. are nice, but Ingram and Kirk really run this thing. And if he has time to get it out to those guys down the field a little bit more maybe than last year, I think he can be right there in the, well above 4,000 yards this season. He threw a bunch of interceptions last year, and he fumbled the ball a lot. He's got to do a better job of hanging on to the football, and he's made that a point early in training camp. Ball protection, yes, you can't hit the quarterback in training camp, I get it. But, hanging on to the football in the pocket, 2 hands on it, being aware when running with it, because he does utilize his legs a good bit. There was just some fumbles where he just dropped the ball on his own and wasn't even stripped out of his hands a couple of times last year. So just awareness of where he is on the field at times, running with the football, hanging on to it. And if that goes away, then I think just naturally things will progress in the right direction for Trevor Lawrence. And especially if those pieces around him are healthy, this is an offense that can go out. And they said it before last year. They wanted to score 30 points per game last season. Didn't work out. I wouldn't be shocked if that's the goal again this season, though they might not come out and say it this time around.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the wide receivers, JP Shadrick, because I don't know if any of them individually are great wide receivers. I think Christian Kirk is underappreciated. Remember, he got slammed for the deal, and he had a 1,000-yard season, got hurt last year, and was well on his way to doing that once again. But as a unit, it's a pretty good wide receiving unit. Kirk, Davis, Brian Thomas Jr., as I mentioned, Evan Ingram, they got some solid players there, and I know you always want one individually great guy, and some teams have 2 great guys, but as a unit, I don't think this is a unit that you look at and you go, okay, the Jaguars can have a really successful season with the guys that they have.
And this is an offense, Zach, that Doug Peterson, Press Taylor, the offensive coordinator, put together with the mindset that, hey, we can move these pieces around. They don't need a true number. They would love one. That'd be great if they had a true number one. Everybody would love one. but they can work with, if you will, number twos and move them around different parts of the offense. That's the idea here. The Christian Kirk, yeah, he'll be a slot receiver a lot of the time, but he can line up outside if he needs to. And yes, Brian Thomas Jr. is a speedster down the field in theory. He's a rookie. But, hey, if he has a matchup inside that works, cool. Evan Ingram has the skill set to go outside and have a matchup advantage in some situations too. So the idea that you're stuck in one position here is not true at all. But you have to have the smarts to be able to do that and understand all pieces of the offense at all times. There was a past receiver here, Zay Jones, who – there was an instance a couple times where he was lined up in a spot. They didn't have time to switch, so he's just got to run Christian Kirk's route. So you have to know every route, every part of the offense in order for this thing to really click the way Press Taylor and Doug Peterson think about it. And they've got the skill set, at least these receivers, it feels like the top-tier guys do, to get that done.
JP Shadrick here with us. And I'd be remiss also, I know he's a running back, but he also catches the ball a ton as well. Oh, yeah. Travis Etienne Jr., I know you guys in Jacksonville understand how good he is. Clemson fans know how good he is. I know it's only been 2 years and he had the injury too. I don't think people appreciate how good, like we talk about underappreciated players in the league. What he's been able to do the last 2 years has really been sensational.
And last year especially, I mean, his first year obviously was hurt. He had the Liz Frank injury in the preseason and missed his rookie year, as you mentioned there. But then the first season on the field, his second year in the NFL, he was just getting blasted, it felt like, all the time. He would take hits and go head over heels, and you didn't know if he was going to be able to withstand all of that contact all the time. Well, last season it felt like he learned a little bit of, hey, the patience it takes behind an offensive line for them to set up the blocks. You don't have to speed around the corner. You can wait for the guard to pull and make a block and get into that little crease, and then you make your move and go. And then when it got to the holes, he was just kind of running and kind of tiptoeing toward the holes early in the season. Well, running through the hole, not to the hole and through it, and that helped him as the season went along, and you saw some big-time runs for him. And, yeah, Press Taylor said it the other day, the offensive coordinator, that having him in the passing game is going to be a big piece of what they do as well. They didn't do a lot of that in the past. I could see that being part of it as well. But if this team's running the ball well, I think that would be it's a huge balance for what they want to do in the passing game. And Etienne's great. Now, Tank Bigsby's got to have a big step in that too. He's the second running back, and they lost some trust in him early in his rookie season last year. He lost the ball, fumbled a couple times, but that confidence seems to be back. He's running better in training camp, protecting the football, and if he gets some reps, that gives Etienne some time off to the side. That could help him come December and January.
I have a lot of respect, JP Shadrick, for not only you, but also Doug Peterson, the coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I got to know him a little bit when he was in Philly, right? Saw him lead the Eagles to their first ever Super Bowl with Nick Foles and win that Super Bowl, I should say. And then the following year, right, Wentz got hurt again. Foles was in the divisional round. If Alshon Jeffrey could have just caught that ball, if it did go right off his hands, they're probably back in the NFC Championship game again. And then Wentz was finally able to be healthy, then gets hurt up against the Seahawks in a wild card game. And we know it bottomed out towards the end, and I thought he was unfairly fired, or they moved on from him. Then he lands in Jacksonville, playoffs in the first year. Second year, they regressed. How do you, though, think the league views Doug Peterson? Because even in Philly, when he was there was even questions, even after winning a Super Bowl, on what Doug Peterson is as a coach, which was crazy to me.
I wonder if that's just Philly talking. You know how Philly is. It's a little different of a marketplace, and they kind of go after you pretty quick there. And he loves Philadelphia, and it still does to this day.
And now he's a god there, to be clear.
Right. They have a statue of the guy in the parking lot. I mean, him and the quarterback. So, no, and that's sometimes it ends that way. It rarely ends the right way in the NFL. Like, a lot of times you're going to get fired, even if things happen. He took a year off. He reset. He came and took a different team to the playoffs in year one, and they were 8-3 last year. And no excuses. However, the injury bug bit. They couldn't find their way to. They lost 5 of the last 6 games of the season, and they couldn't get it done when they needed to at the end. Quarterbacks hurt, offensive lines hurt, receivers, whatever. That's fine. But they were right there on the doorstep. It felt like. So, if he's able to get them back to the promised land this year, the playoffs, and division title again. And I don't know how many guys have won Super Bowls at 2 different teams. That obviously would put him on a different stratosphere if he's able to get it done here in Jacksonville. And they feel like they have the parts at least to have a division title run. And from there, you never know once you get to the playoffs. So I think around here, he has the full respect of everybody in Jacksonville already still. I don't think the clock's not ticking or anything like that. I think he's in good shape. The quarterback's in good shape for a while. The defensive end's in good shape for a while. They've got some cornerstone pieces here. Why would you want to even consider breaking that up unless there's some just tremendous disaster of the season that we don't see ahead of time? So I think the owner wants to win, and he wants to win now. And I think he's made that pretty clear to the organization and the team. However, I think they have a team that's ready to go win right now. And they are a division champion if they can go overtake the Texans, because they're going to be very good as well.
And here's the thing, that division's really good. Like even Tennessee, who's the worst team in the division, they got some players on that roster. Indianapolis almost made the playoffs last year without their quarterback. We know the Jaguars fell back a little bit, but they were still a solid squad and won the division a season ago. And the Texans, right, they have everything cooking when they couldn't get anything cooking for about 4 or 5 years. I actually think the Jaguars are gonna win this division. Now, it's not me saying that the Texans are going to faceplant from what they did last year. I think they're going to make the playoffs too. But it feels like the South can send 2 teams to the playoffs this year, and I'm expecting a big bounce-back season from the Jaguars. And I think they're getting slept on where not a lot of people are talking about them because they disappointed towards the end of the season a year ago.
And it's the same thing the Jags went through last year, right, Zach? I mean, the Jags were the great new team that won the division.
Ready to take the next step like the Texans are perceived to this year.
And then they faltered, right? How do the Texans handle that spotlight? They've got personnel down there that's fantastic. I get it. But it's a little different when you have that target on you and teams are gunning for you each week. So this is a great division. And Indy, don't count those guys out either. When all of a sudden their quarterback is back, if he's healthy, the way he plays, let's see if he can stay healthy as the season goes along. They're nothing to take lightly as well. So this is a competitive division. And, I mean, the Jaguars should be right there on the doorstep again. The schedules, all schedules in the NFL are tough. We get that. But 3 of the first 4 for the Jaguars are on the road, including down in Houston, the 4th one of them. They come home for a game against Indy. They go to London for 2 weeks this year again. And then they've got the NFC North coming to town for a few weeks. That's all before Thanksgiving.
Now, you guys have a gauntlet of a schedule.
It's difficult. So if they can get through this first, 2/3 of the season around 500 and get to the back end where 4 or 6 are at home, 2 against Tennessee, yes, we're playing schedule football. That's fine. You got to go play it on the field. If they can get through the early part of this gauntlet, I think they're in really good shape.
Last thing I'll ask you, JP Shadrick, defensively. I know they brought in Armstead. You have Josh Hines-Allen, who's phenomenal. Trayvon Walker started to show more than a pulse a year ago. I know they lost Rayshon Jenkins in free agency this past year, who was a good player for them. I remember 2 years ago the game he had up against Dallas. But how do you evaluate this defense heading into this season?
Well, it's new. They've got a new coordinator in Ryan Nielsen who comes in, and it feels like they'll have a few more 4-down looks on the defensive line. They were truly a 3-4 in the last couple of years. There'll be still some of that look also, but they're mainly going to be a 4-down lineman. So in theory, it's Josh Hines-Allen on one end, Eric Armstead on the big end. You got Devon Hamilton at nose tackle. We'll see if he's healthy. He had some back issues last year. Those are 3 of the 4 up front. Linebackers, Devin Lloyd needs to take a step this year, another first-round pick from a couple years ago. Foye Oluokun just signed another contract with the Jaguars, and he was the leading tackler in the league for a couple years with Atlanta and then with Jacksonville again. But the secondary is different now. They've had some changes there. They brought in some veteran players. They got Tyson Campbell. They locked him down on a long contract at corner. They've got Andre Sisco, who is in a contract year, his 4th year in the NFL out of Syracuse at one safety. And then everything else is kind of up for grabs right now. And they brought in some veteran players. You mentioned Eric Armstead, 10-year player. They also brought in 10th-year cornerback Ronald Darby, who will have some time on this team. He'll probably be on the other side of it. Darnell Savage, a guy who's a veteran in the league, will probably play some safety for them. They've got Antonio Johnson, a guy they drafted a couple years ago out of A&M, who will play some of that kind of hybrid nickel safety thing. So it's a new feel. They want their cornerbacks to play press and get up on the line a good bit. That'll be a different style than they've had around here in the last couple of years. And let's see what happens. But they've got some pretty strong personnel and some veteran players that have played a lot of football on this defense. It's not like they're running out a bunch of rookies, so they should be able to compete. And certainly the first week of training camp, the news around here was that the Jaguars defense was intercepting Trevor Lawrence, like left and right. It changed, of course, in week 2. It always happens that way. So everybody was all fired up about the defense and concerned about the quarterback, but all is back well again here in Duval.